Hello, everyone. I would like to welcome you all guys to our first podcast in a series of upcoming podcasts that's being produced by Search for Common Ground under the Rights Advanced project. My name is Joanna, and today we're welcoming a very special guest. His name is Dastan, and I will let him to introduce himself. Dastan.
Thank you, Joan. I'm really happy to be here today for a discussion about the subject and the topic that we have. I'm Dastan Hamakarim. I'm a practitioner in the development and humanitarian field in Iraq and Kurdistan. I have worked in this field for almost 8 years. I have a couple of degrees, but the most relevant for today, I have studied Master in the Violence, Conflict and Development in London SOAS University, and I would be happy today for our discussion.
Thank you. So today our discussion is going to be about the freedom of assembly, which includes assembling for the different purposes, and in the Iraqi context, how they're dealing with this terminology and how it's being observed, and what could we do or recommend to be done by the government and by the people for their rights to be protected.
Yeah, so basically, before starting the discussion, I want just to highlight that this discussion is a result and outcome for a policy brief within the project that I have worked with the other colleagues, and that's available with the Search and other, I think, partners to look at it. So I think for that question, we have to return back to see the legal maybe definition, or how's the legal supporting or the assembly of people, or freedom of assembly. According to Iraqi constitution, which is that majority of Iraqis in 2005 in a referendum voted for this constitution, it's giving or granting the freedom of expression, freedom of assembly to all Iraqis. And basically there is no clear restriction on what's the freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, but basically I think it has written that it contains the freedom of expression in media and any other spaces, the freedom of press, which is like the prints, the newspapers, the TV, like anything which goes into the site, and also the freedom of assembly, which means like a group, I don't know, maybe more than 2 people that they can assemble and demand a right, or they protest for an issue that it's impacting their life, or a bigger group, 100 or 1,000 people come together to assemble either for protest or defending an issue, defending a case or something like that. But clearly what we have as a legal and law and constitutional support, that all Iraqis should have a freedom of assembly. The Iraqi constitution gives the space later for the parliament and parliament members to work in a law to somehow regulate the protests, the assemblies. Unfortunately, until now, we don't have that. The only regulation or the only law which is in place, it's a law from the Coalition Provisional Authority, the CPA, that has, let's say, ruled Iraq for a couple of years before the election and before the forming of the government. But that was specifically for the context of after 2003, not for the constitution and not for the whole assembly, freedom of assembly. But rather than that, there is no any other rule or law or regulation that restrict or limit the protest or freedom of assembly.
Oh, excellent. So you already mentioned that the Constitution grants that freedom to assemble. And there was an emergency edict that was issued to protect protesters. But in reality, right now, what does that mean? What does the freedom of assembly means, even though it's granted by the Constitution?
Yes, so I think that's a broader issue for the whole Iraq, that when it comes for the laws and rules on paper, they are great, they are nice, giving you all the freedom and rights. But when it comes to the practice, it's a different world. It's different. So it's changed within the context, within the time and period of the incidents and events that happened in Iraq. I think, as mentioned in the policy brief as well, we have a different period that we can divide the nature of protest and assembly in Iraq. Before 2012 and 2013, I think there was no major issue with the protest assemblies in Iraq, because usually it was, let's say, a small group of students, employees, any other, let's say, group who has like an issue. They do a protest, couple of hours, like they go in front of the ministry, the council of ministries, I don't know, the parliament, for demanding the issue they have to be resolved. After 2012, it has changed, because we have a huge protest in specific areas in Iraq, which is like Sunni majority areas, that they had like protest. First, it was demanding the services, public services, and other political requests and demand that they have. I think that protest faced a harsh reaction from the armed groups, from the government. So unfortunately, like there was a lot of casualties. And then like right after that protest and the incident, we came to the fall of that cities under the control of the terrorist group of ISIS. And then, so that's one of the points that the nature of assemblies, the nature of protest in Iraq has changed, because there is no actual laws to protect the assemblies and protesters. Many casualties like fall from that protest in 2012. Then after that, we have another event, an incident which has changed again the protest nature in Iraq, which is like the Tishrin movement in 2018-19 in Baghdad, which was like mainly happened in Baghdad. And I think we all know that specific protest.
And I think Tishrin protesters, which I think it's a very important event to be looked at. Now, we know that the Constitution grants the freedom of assembly, even if it's protest in the shape of protest, it's fine. But why, decision makers are looking at it as a threat whenever there's an assembly or a protest?
Yeah, I think it depends on the demand and the request and the slogans of that protest and the assembly. So it's different from one to another one. So as I say, like sometimes the specific group of students, employees, unemployees, like the job seekers, or like graduate who didn't find a job. So I think for them the demand is really, really very well known, that they ask to be employed, or like there is a I don't know, again, like so many different topics that just matter for a specific group. But like in case of the Tishrin, like the demand was it was added day by day. Like the demands were like getting more and more day by days. So sometimes that demands change to the political issues, or like political requests as well. For example, I think in case of Tishrin, like there was the slogans of changing the system and that kind of things that has been mentioned. So I think that's as an alert for the authorities, for the armed group, and all the people who are in power. Again, it's about the what's in the law, what's in the rules, and what's happening actually on the ground. Which is it was not just about like how they perceived the Tishrin protest and the assembly, but also the reaction for that protest was very harsh, and it was bloody. Unfortunately, like so many people lost their life in that movement. And I think after that we see like there is like a very security restriction on the protest. So I think like now they have to ask for permissions, like that the permission should, like the authority should know what's the purpose of that, who's participating, like what will be the road, and all of that things. So there is again so many restriction on the assembly and protest in Iraq based on the experience of the Tishrin movement. Again, it's all out of law, like there is no law to do that. But it's important to know that there is effort to restrict the protest, and the right which is like all Iraqis have by constitution to be restricted through the laws and regulation, which is, I think it's that's a message, and that's the where the human rights defenders should work, like to ensure that no rules will pass which is like against the basic right of protest and assembly, which has been granted by the Iraqi constitution to all people.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. So it's a right and it is granted by the constitution, but then again restricted by law.
Yes.
So it's now a gray area.
I mean, as I say, like it's not restricted by law now, but we have actually a couple of words which is also very vague in the constitution, because it says like the protest and assembly should, I think, keep the public morals and public order. We don't have a definition of what's a public order and what's a public moral. So sometimes the authority misuse that two terminology to restrict and even to react for the protests and assemblies negatively. Basically, they say like, oh, that's not aligned with the Iraqi public moral. We don't have a definition what's a public moral, because maybe I consider something public moral, you don't consider it. So it's not a topic for discussion between the people. It should be actually by law and from parliament or from government to give like the action definition of what's public moral and what's public order, so the people know that these are the public order and these are the public moral, and then they do not break it or something like that. And it will not be misused for confronting the protesters and assemblies. So there is that two vague terminology which like legally create a problem for how the government react or deal with the protest, which gives them like it's like an elastic terminology. You can use it whenever it's in your favor.
Yeah. So we can say that the legitimacy of a protest is defined by how the people in power see it.
Yes.
So in that case, if the power, who is the one that's holding the law, does not see this protest as to be legitimate to them, then who's going to protect the protesters?
Yeah. So I think always there is a difference between like not even in the ideal world, but like that the power should be divided, or like each part of the like for example, government should have their role, the parliament should have their role, the judiciary system also should have their role. So like the power should be divided between that three main component, to not have just one of them to have control the whole power, and also for parliament because they have to monitor. They are the one who's responsible to monitor the actions of the executives, of the rule of the law and the constitution. They should have their own role as well. But unfortunately, like there is a mix of role managing. We see it in Iraq. But unfortunately, at the end, the protesters and the one who wants to express their let's say opinion, like their demand will be left alone by all the different parts of the system, either the judiciary system, the executives, or the government or the parliament. So unfortunately, that's a reality.
Okay, that's true. So in that, there might be cases where there's no one to protect those protesters.
Yeah. So I mean, yes, of course. Again, it depends on the subject and the nature of the protest, because like we have so many protests which is supporting the different, like the specific groups or like specific demand which is like aligned with the maybe agenda and strategy of different actors. We see that they will be protected very well, and like the main roads will be closed for them. So again, it's different of what's the demand of the protest. Otherwise, there are some assemblies like thousands of people participating and the government protecting it very, very well because it's aligned with the agenda of different actors.
Thank you. I think that clears many things. So our next questions, you were part of the policy brief that was produced for Rights Advance. So can you say there were recommendations within that? Can you say which recommendations are long-term are still valid?
Yes. So I think what we have discussed, we just can't change, we can just shift it to the recommendations. First of all, I think there should be a clear and very human right oriented rule and law to be passed in the parliament, so it can support the right which was granted to the Iraqis by constitution, which asks for the later for the law to regulate the protest. So I think the most important one is for the parliament members and the different political parties actually to come up with the law that's that's ensure that it align with the rights, the freedom of assembly, freedom of expression in media, for printing, journalism, media, and all of that things. And for that law to be clear that there should be no restriction on the nature and demands of protesters. And again, for that law to give the clear role and responsibility for security forces, just to make sure that there will be just maybe one part or one faction of securities that will be responsible to protect the protesters, not to attack them. And I think that's a space for the human rights defenders, the activists, all the international NGOs, anyone who's the freedom of expression is matter for them, to participate in drafting the law which is into the standard of the human right, the global human right, and also again align with the Iraqi constitution. For that law also to clarify clearly the definition of the terminology of the public moral and public order. So it will be clear for the judiciary system, for government, for security, for protesters to be honest. Sometimes maybe it's needed, because then you should know very well the culture, the context, the social fabric of Iraq, because maybe some demand of, if a group comes up with a request for I don't know, a subject which is actually not aligned with the Iraqis culture, or Iraqis is disrespecting a specific group, ethnic and religion, of course by law should be some restriction on that kind of assemblies. So we don't say all the assemblies without any consideration should be allowed, because sometimes also it's a problem. But we say that the freedom of expression, which is aligned with the human right, it's not contradicting with the culture, the main cultural thing, because again the culture also, it's very broad. The social morals is also very broad. So that's where the lawmakers, the human rights defenders, activists should work together to define all of that thing. So there is a space for really a lot of work to be done. But one of the main recommendations is that law to be passed, and also for the security's role and responsibility to be clarified, which is really, really needed. So that's the two main recommendation. And also there are other law which is impacting the freedom of expression, especially on media. There are some law passed in the recent years, which is actually limiting what the people say on media. It's not about the assembly, but it's actually limiting the freedom of expression, which is another pillar that the constitution granted to the Iraqis, all Iraqis. So I think all of that laws should be also somehow to be eliminated, somehow monitor what's people and what's the individuals saying on TV, on media, especially the activists. Because of that, so many activists cannot say what they want to say freely, and they cannot express their opinions, and also their political opinion, the cultural opinion, anything.
I think that law also it combats hate speech. So we're not saying it's all bad, but it needs to be open the road for some, expression of freedom that requires some sort of right for the citizens. Anyways, so going back to the international actors, including NGOs, we know that the UNAMI's mission, the UN's assistance mission to Iraq, has been ended last year. and it was at the request of Iraq after it was extended. So how does that impact the scenario in the Iraq? Does it support the civil movements in Iraq, or is it a pushback for the civil movement?
Definitely it's a pushback. Like there is no positive side or like into that. Either the UNAMI or like other international NGO, if they withdraw from Iraq, either because of the political pressure or even because of the cut in the fund, like at the end it's impacting what's in the ground and the people who's working in the activism, who are practitioners in this field. So basically it's a pushback. It's a sad reality for what we see. The international actors, I think they should first, for all of them to have collaboration together, because like if they also separately, like each actor does the things that they want to do without the actual collaboration, I think they cannot create the force like that, strengthening their voices. So I think the first step, which is also I think I ask, is that for all of them to have collaboration, at least like for the subjects and topics which is related to matter for the human right in Iraq. Unfortunately, like with the case of the UNAMI, because I think that was a political decision and whatever, but also we see that there is like a pressure on the national NGOs, like a local Iraqi and Kurdistan NGOs, like their spaces is being shrinked to the limit that they cannot actively have voice, that for them to not actively be able to let's say participate in the discussions, like also to have a different opinion. So we can see that it's not just with the UNAMI, but with the whole entire sector of the civil societies in Iraq under the attack of different actors for their role to be limited.
Okay, that's unfortunate, and I think it's being felt by all the NGOs and civil society organizations nowadays. So we are nearing our end of the podcast. What message do you have for the Iraqi decision makers and the Iraqi people?
Yeah, so I think that the message is clear that what the constitution granted for the Iraqis, they have to practice it as it has been granted. So there should be no limitation, no restriction, and I think it's a universal right for everyone to express their opinion, to express like what they want to express, either the demand, request, even if it's a political demand or request, and in every possible ways, either through assembly or through the journalism, media, through the like printing, like any ways that they want to express their idea, their opinion, should be granted and should be protected, because like otherwise we cannot live in a society that's depend or like that's supported by the democracy, that's supported by the protecting of human rights. Because like if we limit on that sides and that right of the people, so basically we don't live in a place which has democracy and which is respect and protect the human rights. So I think that should be the clear message for everyone.
Thank you. I think that was a really good message. And if you don't have anything more to say, I think we can end this podcast, and hopefully we see you soon.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the discussion.
You are most welcome. Hopefully we see you again.
Thank you.